Hi Convey85, I'm probably not the best person to respond to your video because I'm not a scientist, but I get the idea that you're not a scientist either, so that should make us a good match. And if you are a scientist, my apologies. The first thing that needs to be said is that science does not claim to know everything. It makes no claim on omniscience at all. As a scientist once said, science never proves a scientific fact, it just doesn't disprove it. Science is being corrected all the time. A well-known story is when Albert Einstein was working on his theory of relativity, his calculations told him that the universe would be expanding, and an expanding universe was not a scientific consensus of the time. So he came up with his idea of the cosmological constant to make the case for a stable universe. However, when Edwin Hubble later found scientific evidence that the universe was indeed expanding, Einstein scrapped the cosmological constant, called it the worst mistake of his life, and we continued to have the theory of the expanding universe. Please note that there was no conspiracy among the scientific elite to preserve the idea of the cosmological constant despite evidence to the contrary. So science is always revising itself. Now, that being said, we have observed over centuries, dating back from the ancient Greeks into Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, all those guys. Some things have been observed throughout history and some things haven't. So science can say with some degree of confidence some things are true and other things are unlikely. The things in the true category we call natural, the things in the unlikely category we call supernatural. And if a scientist discovers that something once thought to be supernatural becomes scientifically proven, then it gets put in the natural category. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a teenage daughter, and she comes up to you and says, "Daddy, I'm pregnant." And when you say to your daughter, let's call her Bristol, when you say to Bristol, "What happened?" she says, "Daddy, it's a miracle. God put this baby in my tummy. It was immaculately conceived." What is your first thought? Your first thought is that she's probably not telling the truth. And so wouldn't you want to do everything in your power to make sure she wasn't lying? Wouldn't you ask her friends, try to find out what she was doing the past few weeks, leave no stone unturned to make sure that there wasn't a guy, or that she at least wasn't artificially inseminated? Wouldn't you want to do everything in your power as a parent to make sure that that baby wasn't immaculately conceived before you would conclude that it was immaculately conceived? Well, that's kind of the way science works. Try to prove that something unlikely isn't true by using what you already know before you conclude that something unlikely isn't so unlikely anymore. And by the way, if it turns out that Bristol's baby was immaculately conceived, you could write a whole new chapter in science history.